The Commonwealth didn't sleep. It only pretended to. At night, the ruins of Boston became a mouthful of broken teeth, black towers against a sickly sky, windows like empty eye sockets, streets like veins filled with dust. The wind moved through everything that used to matter, whistling through collapsed overpasses and hollowed-out office blocks, carrying the smell of rust and old fires. Somewhere in the distance, a feral thing screamed, and then the sky screamed back. A sound tore open the air above an abandoned highway, sharp and metallic, like the world itself being cut. The night twisted, light bent. A circular wound appeared in the sky, a spinning fracture of white and blue so bright it made the ruins glow like bones. For a heartbeat, the Commonwealth held its breath. Then the wound vomited something out. A silver shape slammed into the freeway with the force of a bomb. Concrete erupted in a ring. A shockwave shoved dust and grit outward, rattling dead cars and dragging loose sheet metal into a screaming slide. The crater smoked as if the earth had been branded. Silence returned, and in that silence, something stood up. He rose from the crater like a machine, remembering it had a purpose. Metal limbs unfolded. Artificial muscles tightened beneath segmented armor. Servos whined softly, almost polite, as he straightened to his full height. The figure's hair was pale, moonlit white, and it hung in messy strands around a face that wasn't fully human anymore. A cyborg. His eyes flickered, and the world snapped into focus through layers of data. Radiation density, wind speed, structural decay, unknown biological signatures in the distance. The Commonwealth came alive to him as a hostile map. His jaw tightened. "What is this place?" The voice sounded human. It didn't match the body. He turned his head slowly. No signal towers, no drones, no satellite response. Nothing but ruins and the steady tick of radiation warnings. A nuclear wasteland. Raiden flexed his fingers, watching them move with the precision of engineered violence. Then he touched the handle of the weapon at his side, the high-frequency blade resting like a promise. "Great," he muttered. "Another hell." They saw the flash from the 2 blocks away. Raiders lived by hunger and rumors, and in the Commonwealth, a strange light was basically an invitation. 3 of them crouched behind a half-collapsed billboard, grinning as they watched the crater smoke. "Tell me you saw that," one whispered. "Hard not to," another said. "Sky ripped open like a zipper." The 3rd raider, thin, twitchy, eyes too wide, licked his cracked lips. "Maybe it's Institute Tech." The leader snorted. He had a jagged helmet and a shotgun held like it was part of his arm. "Don't care if it's God's own toaster. Shiny things buy chems." He spat into the dirt and rose. "All right," he said. "We walk up, we make it scared, we take what we want." They fanned out as they approached the highway, boots crunching glass and bone-dry weeds. The crater was still steaming. The silver figure stood at its edge like it belonged there, like falling from a hole in reality was normal. He didn't look lost. He looked quiet. Stillness like a knife on a table. The leader lifted his shotgun. "Hey, Tin Man!" The figure turned his head. The raider's grin faltered just a little. There was something wrong about the way the stranger moved. Too controlled, too smooth, like a predator pretending to be calm. "What are you supposed to be?" the raider called. "Some kind of rich boy robot?" The Silverman stared at them. His gaze wasn't empty. It was measuring, like he was deciding whether they were a threat or an inconvenience. He spoke, calm as falling snow. "I'd recommend putting those weapons down." For a second, it didn't register. Then the raiders burst out laughing. The leader barked out, "You hear that? He's recommending!" He pumped the shotgun like it was a joke. "Or what?" he snarled. "You gonna cry about it?" The Silverman sighed. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It sounded like exhaustion. His hand moved to the hilt of his sword, and the world broke. The raiders fired. Muzzle flashes lit the highway like camera flashes at an execution. But the bullets didn't fly. They crawled. Raiden's perception spiked into something almost unreal, time stretching thin like molten glass. Each bullet hung in the air, spinning slowly, tiny death seeds suspended in a quiet world. His body moved like a thought. The high-frequency blade slid free with a clean, ringing note. Beautiful and wrong. Raiden stepped forward into the storm of frozen bullets. First Raider, his rifle lifted. Raiden's blade whispered across it. Metal fell away in perfect slices, the weapon splitting into neat pieces that clattered to the asphalt once time resumed. Second Raider, Raiden pivoted, sword flashing. The man's armor, shoulder, and gun separated into clean sections, as if the universe had decided he was made of paper. Third Raider, the twitchy one. Raiden stopped in front of him, so close the Raider could smell ozone and hot metal. The blade hovered at his throat, vibrating so fast it made the air shimmer. The Raider's eyes trembled in their sockets. Time snapped back. Gunfire finished its echo. The sliced weapons hit the ground. Blood sprayed like sudden rain. The leader fell in pieces, screaming halfway through the fall. The last Raider dropped to his knees, hands shaking, staring at his ruined gun like it had betrayed him. Raiden looked down at him. "You people always open with violence?" he asked. The Raider tried to speak. Nothing came out. Only a pathetic, breathless noise. Raiden's expression didn't change, but something colder lived behind his eyes. He sheathed the blade. "Yeah," he said softly. "Wrong world for that." And he walked away. Behind him, the survivor crawled backward, sobbing and whispering a word he didn't understand. Monster. Raiden moved through the ruins like a ghost with weight. He crossed cracked streets and past skeletons seated in cars, their hands still on steering wheels like they'd been waiting for traffic to move. His sensors tracked heat signatures in the distance. Humans mostly, some hiding, some stalking. He didn't follow them. He wasn't here to hunt. Not yet. A radio crackled somewhere in the darkness, spitting out static in a faint voice trying to sound cheerful. Raiden stopped long enough to listen. "If you can hear this, don't travel at night. Raiders are..." Static swallowed the message. Raiden kept walking. Then he heard it. Heavy footsteps. Not human. Something big. Something confident. A shape emerged from the ruins, tall, broad, and wrong. A reptilian nightmare built out of muscle and bone plating. Its claws scraped asphalt. Its breath steamed in the cold air. The creature stared at Raiden like it had just found the next meal. It opened its mouth and roared. The sound shook dust from broken windows. Raiden stared back. "Okay," he said, voice almost amused. "That's new." The beast charged. Raiden didn't move until the last second. Then he blurred forward. The blade flashed once, clean, bright, surgical. The creature ran another step out of habit. Then it split in half. Its top half slid off its bottom half like a door falling from broken hinges. Blood poured out in a thick, steaming wave. The corpse hit the ground with a crash that echoed down the street. Raiden stood still, sword dripping. He looked at the dead monster, then toward the distant skyline of Boston. Lights flickered there. Smoke rose. A city pretending it wasn't dead. He started walking again, because whatever this place was, it clearly had problems. And problems had a way of finding him. Deep below the Commonwealth, where the world's radiation couldn't touch clean white walls and polished floors, the Institute reacted. A relay technician stared at the monitor, face pale. "We got the anomaly recorded," he said. The energy signature didn't match any known teleport pattern. A scientist beside him adjusted his glasses, eyes fixed on the footage. On screen, a silver man moved. Raiders fired, then stopped existing in one piece. A Deathclaw charged, then became two. The scientist whispered, almost reverently, "That isn't power armor. That isn't robotics we've cataloged. That's..." He didn't finish. A door hissed open. A higher authority entered the room, quiet as a threat. The director watched the footage without blinking. When it ended, the director spoke in a voice that didn't invite debate. "Deploy a retrieval unit." The technician swallowed. "For capture?" The director's eyes were cold and bright. "Yes," they said. "Capture." A pause just long enough for fear to settle into the room. "And if you can't?" The director leaned closer to the screen, watching the silver man sheath his sword like it was nothing. Then terminate. High above the ruins, something else moved. A shadow crossed the Commonwealth, massive and slow, like a steel whale swimming through cloud. The Brotherhood of Steel's airship, Pridwin, drifted toward Boston with its floodlights sleeping. Inside, a communications officer hurried across the command deck, datapad clenched in his hand. "Elder," he said, voice urgent, "we received a patrol report." A giant of a man in power armor turned toward him. Elder Maxson, his presence filling the room, even without raising his voice. "Report." The officer hesitated and then spoke quickly. "Unknown hostile, not a mutant, not a raider. Patrol witnessed him dismantle 3 raiders without using firearms." Maxson's eyes narrowed. "What did he use?" The officer's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "A sword," he said. Maxson stared for a moment, as if waiting for the punchline. None came. "A sword," Maxson repeated. "Yes, sir." Maxson turned toward the viewport, looking down at the ruined world crawling with threats. "Find him," he said quietly. There was something sharp in the calmness of his tone. "Before the Institute does." Raiden didn't know their names. He didn't know the Institute had already classified him as an anomaly. He didn't know the Brotherhood was triangulating his position from frightened patrol chatter. He only knew the air tasted wrong, and the world was full of desperate people carrying weapons like prayers. He walked toward the city. Each step was steady, measured. But inside his chest, behind the synthetic ribs and armored plating, something old and familiar shifted. A hunger he'd fought for years. Violence always found him. And this world, this radioactive, lawless graveyard, felt like it was begging for it. Raiden's fingers tightened around the hilt of his sword. In the far distance, Boston's skyline waited like a battlefield. And somewhere deep in his mind, the voice he hated, the voice he'd buried under missions and moral justifications, stirred awake. Jack, the Ripper, smiling in the dark. Dawn didn't arrive in the Commonwealth so much as it broke through the smog with a dull orange bruise. Boston's ruins surfaced from the haze like the bones of a dead giant. Bridges collapsed into the river, streets spider-webbed with cracks, and towers that leaned at angles that made the sky look crooked. A gust of wind skittered trash across the asphalt, a child's doll with no eyes, a torn Vault-Tec poster, a bottle cap that spun like a coin trying to decide if the world was worth it. Raiden walked straight into it. He moved like an argument the Wasteland couldn't answer. Each step was measured, quiet, too controlled for a place that lived on panic and noise. His sensors painted the world in invisible layers. Heat blooms behind walls, radiation puddles in the low places, structural weaknesses in the concrete, micro-vibrations in the air that hinted at footsteps he couldn't yet hear. Most of the Commonwealth didn't understand quiet the way he did. Quiet meant an ambush. Quiet meant a predator breathing through its teeth. Raiden's hand rested near the hilt of his blade. Not nervous, not eager, just ready. A distant gunshot echoed, then another, then laughter, thin, wild, and mean. Raiden didn't change pace. He'd heard that laugh before, in different languages, on different continents. It always meant the same thing. People hurt other people for fun. He reached a corner where a collapsed storefront formed a little cave of shadow. Something scuttled inside. His optics zoomed. A rad roach, fat, glossy, obscene, skittered over old packaging. It paused, antennae twitching. Raiden stared at it. The roach stared back. He let it live. "Not worth the power draw," he muttered. Then his threat display flickered. Anomalous energy spike, localized, 36 meters. Raiden slowed. His head tilted slightly like he was listening to something only he could hear. The air felt wrong. Not the crackle of radiation, not the natural hum of ruined transformers, not even the faint static of old pre-war tech struggling to die. This was cleaner, sharper, like a surgical knife sliding out of a sterile tray. A soft pop, and the street lit up blue. 6 figures appeared around him in a precise circle. Their arrival was silent, except for the faint hiss of ionized air. White armor, synthetic skin, dead eyes. Raiden looked at them the way a mechanic looked at a machine someone else built badly. One stepped forward, posture too perfect. Its voice had no accent, no emotion, no humanity. "Unknown cybernetic entity, you are ordered to surrender." Raiden's eyes tracked the rifles, Laser capacitor signatures, clean engineering, no rust, no improvisation. These aren't Wastelanders. He glanced at their faces, human enough to make you uneasy, not human enough to trust. He spoke casually, as if they'd stopped him for directions. Who are you supposed to be? The synth leader's head shifted by exactly 3 degrees. Institute Field Unit, you will comply. Raiden blinked once. The Institute, he repeated, tasting the words like they were new. His tactical overlays filled in the gap with a warning label. Unknown faction, unknown capability. But their teleportation tech was real. His mind clicked through possibilities. Not magic, not alien, just technology. Compliance will prevent unnecessary damage, the synth continued. Raiden's mouth twitched. Almost a smile, almost a grimace. Yeah, he said. I've heard that one. The synth raised its rifle. You will be returned intact. Resistance is not advised. Raiden sighed. He could have tried diplomacy. He could have asked questions. He could have played the New World politics game. But the rifles were already angled. The formation was already a kill box. The tone wasn't negotiation. It was a leash. Raiden's fingers curled around the sword hilt. I'm not a pet, he said softly. The synth leader's voice stayed flat. Then you will be terminated. And the street exploded into light. Laser fire carved bright lines across the ruins, clean beams hissing through dust, slicing chunks off the edges of parked cars and punching molten holes through concrete. A billboard shattered, raining sparks and old paint. Raiden moved. Not fast, faster than fast. Like the world forgot he needed time to cross distance. The first laser beam passed through where his neck had been. His blade left the sheath with a singing note, vibrating at frequencies that made the air shimmer. The sound was delicate, almost pretty. The effect was not. He took one step, then another, and the world thickened around him. His perceptions spooled up. The city slowed into a syrupy dream. Blade mode. The first synth fired again. Raiden angled his sword and split the beam, the energy scattering into sparks that crawled over the blade's surface like angry fireflies. He was already inside their ring. His sword flicked once. A synth's rifle fell into 3 neat sections before the unit realized his hands were holding nothing. Another flick. A synth's arm dropped, still gripping a trigger that would never be pulled again. The synth tried to adjust, pivoting, bringing its barrel toward Raiden's chest. Raiden's blade whispered across its torso. The machine separated at the waist, top half sliding off the bottom half like a drawer opening. Blue blood, coolant maybe, splashed into the street. Time snapped back. The synth hit the ground in 2 pieces. The others reacted instantly, coordinated, disciplined. They weren't raiders. They weren't scared. They were programmed. 2 units flanked, 3 advanced with overlapping fire. The leader stayed back, recalculating. Raiden's lips parted slightly. Okay, he murmured, so you can learn. Lasers hammered the air. Raiden weaved through them, blade catching, redirecting, splitting. Each deflection was a note in a harsh song. A synth lunged, trying for a grapple. Raiden caught its wrist. The synth's fingers tightened like a vice, servos whining. Raiden tightened his grip. The wrist popped and tore free, synthetic tendons snapping like wet rope. He drove his blade through the unit's chest and out its back, pinning it momentarily to a rusted mailbox. The mailbox rang like a bell. He yanked the sword out. Try again, he said, almost conversational. The remaining synths retreated by half a step. An adaptation, not fear. Their aim shifted. They stopped trying to hit his center mass. They began predicting. One beam grazed his shoulder plating. His HUD flashed a minor warning. Paint scorched, armor held. Raiden's jaw set. All right, he said, voice lower. You want to play smart. He vanished. Not invisibility, just speed. He appeared behind one synth. The unit started to turn. Raiden cut the back of its knee joint. The leg collapsed. He pivoted and kicked the synth into its teammate. Both hit the ground. A third synth raised its rifle for a close-range shot. Raiden chopped the barrel off. Then he punched straight through its faceplate. The synth's head snapped back. Blue fluid sprayed. It slumped. Only the leader remained. It backed away, rifle up, steps perfectly measured. Combat capability exceeds projections, it said. Raiden walked toward it slowly, blade dripping. You're talking, he noted. You got a personality chip in there or something? The leader raised its weapon again. Cease movement. Raiden didn't stop. The synth fired. Raiden's blade cut the beam in half. He kept walking. The synth fired again. Raiden cut it again. The synth fired again. Raiden's eyes narrowed. You know, he said, this is starting to feel personal. The leader's rifle hummed, charging for a higher output blast. Raiden leaned forward slightly. Here's the thing, he said. You're not built for this. The leader fired the overcharged beam. Raiden stepped into it. Not through it, into it. His blade met the energy at an angle that made the beam shear apart, spilling light sideways like water hitting a rock. He was suddenly close enough to see the faint seams in the synth's synthetic skin, close enough to hear its servos whine, close enough for the leader to understand, too late, that it wasn't holding a human at gunpoint. It was aiming at a war machine. Raiden's sword rose. The synth leader's voice finally changed, not emotion, but strain. Stop! Raiden cut once. The leader fell in two pieces, still trying to speak. Silence poured back into the street. Raiden stood among the dismantled bodies and listened to the city again. Distant shots, distant screams, wind and broken buildings. He wiped a streak of blue fluid off his blade with his thumb. Institute, he repeated. He had no idea what they were, but they had teleportation. They had clean tech, and they tried to put a leash on him. Raiden sheathed his sword. Then his sensor screamed. Heavy rotorcraft approaching, 0.8 kilometers. He looked up, and the sky answered with thunder. Before the vertibirds arrived, the raiders did. They were drawn by the laser show, by the blue flashes, by the smell of violence like sharks to blood. Raiders came in packs not because they were brave, but because fear was easier when you had people to hide behind. They spilled out of alleys and collapsed stairwells wearing armor made of traffic signs and bones. Faces painted, teeth filed. One of them had a teddy bear strapped to his chest like a trophy. Their leader swaggered forward, swinging a tire iron casually. He took one look at the sliced synth bodies, then at Raiden, then at the sword, and he grinned like he'd found a lottery ticket. Well, damn, the raider leader said. Look at you, shiny man. Ain't from around here, are you? His crew laughed behind him. One raider with a cracked gas mask called out, He's got that rich boy chrome. Bet we can sell his ass piece by piece. Another yelled, Yo, shiny, you bleed oil or money? Raiden didn't move. He looked at them like he was doing math. How many? He asked aloud. The leader barked a laugh. How many? Buddy, the only number that matters is how many caps you got. Raiden's head tilted. You think I'm here to trade? The leader spit. Nah, you're here to pay or scream. Either works. A skinny raider stepped forward, jabbing a finger at the synth bodies. Hey, those Institute freaks are ours to kill. You got a permit for that? The raiders laughed again. Raiden exhaled slowly. In another life, he might have tried to talk them down. In another life, he might have still been pretending he wasn't good at this. But the Commonwealth had a way of stripping pretense like skin. Raiden's hand hovered near his sword again. Then, a new sound drowned everything out. Whoop, 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 whoop. Vertibirds. The raiders looked up. Their bravado wavered instantly. Ah, hell, one muttered. It's the tin can cult. The leader's grin faltered. The Brotherhood of Steel didn't raid. They purged. The vertibirds roared in low, and the raiders scattered like roaches under light, cursing and shoving. Move, the leader screamed. We ain't dying for some chrome freak. But it was too late. Ropes dropped. Heavy boots hit asphalt. And the street gained new predators. Power armor landed in a semicircle, heavy enough to make the street tremble. Steel giants, each one a walking tank. Their helmets turned in unison, scanning. Laser rifles snapped up, a minigun whined to life. The commander stepped forward, his armor marked with rank insignia, his voice coming through external speakers like a judge pronouncing sentence. Unknown combatant, he boomed. You are ordered to stand down. The raiders froze mid-sprint. One whispered, "Nope," and ran anyway. A Brotherhood soldier tracked him without even turning his head, just a small motion of the rifle. A laser beam lanced out. The Raider's leg evaporated from mid-thigh down. He hit the ground screaming. The commander didn't acknowledge it. His helmet stayed locked on Raiden. "Identify yourself." Raiden glanced at the screaming Raider, then back at the armored squad. Something about the Brotherhood felt familiar. Military structure, doctrine, command presence. The shape of authority. But authority that couldn't see past its own rules was just another kind of stupidity. Raiden spoke calmly. "Where I'm from," he said, "people introduce themselves before pointing guns." The commander took one step closer. "You are in possession of prohibited technology." Raiden's mouth twitched. "This sword?" he asked, tapping the hilt. "It's a family heirloom." A few raiders, still hiding behind debris, snickered. The commander didn't laugh. "Hand it over." Raiden sighed, almost theatrically. "Man," he said, "I just got here." The commander raised his arm. "Engage." The minigun opened fire. The street became a storm. The minigun's roar chewed through the ruins, ripping cars into shredded metal. Concrete exploded. Dust boiled up in thick clouds. Raiders screamed and scattered, some getting cut down mid-run. Raiden didn't flinch. He moved. Bullets hammered the space where he'd been. He crossed the street faster than the gunner could track, his feet barely seeming to touch the ground. The minigun soldier tried to swing the barrel toward him. Raiden was already there. He struck once. The high-frequency blade slid through the minigun like it was warm cheese. The weapon fell apart, barrel sections clattering onto the ground. The power-armored gunner froze. "What?" Raiden's fist drove into the armor's chest plate. Steel buckled. Raiden's hand plunged in, found the power core mount, and ripped. The power core came free with a violent spark. The suit's lights died. The soldier inside sagged, suddenly heavy and human. Raiden tossed the core aside like trash. The commander shouted, "Target is high priority! Concentrate fire!" The squad obeyed. Lasers and bullets filled the air. Raiden activated blade mode again. Not fully, just enough. The world slowed to a crawl. He stepped between beams, the blade flicking out to deflect or cut them. A Brotherhood soldier charged, swinging a power hammer that could crush skulls through helmets. Raiden caught the hammer mid-swing. The impact rang through the street. The soldier's servos strained. Raiden's cybernetic muscles tightened. The hammer stopped dead, shaking in his grip. The Brotherhood soldier's voice crackled through his speakers, suddenly smaller. "Impossible!" Raiden twisted. The hammer snapped in half. He drove the broken head into the soldier's helmet, denting it, then followed with a sword cut that opened the armor from shoulder to hip. The soldier fell, armor peeling away. Another trooper fired a missile. Raiden's eyes snapped to it. Time slowed. He stepped toward the missile, blade already in motion, and cut it. The warhead split cleanly. The explosion blossomed behind him, not on him, showering sparks and heat. The shockwave rattled windows and threw raiders off their feet. Raiden walked out of the smoke. The commander stumbled back a step. For the first time, uncertainty entered his amplified voice. "What are you?" Raiden's tone stayed flat. "A guy," he said, "having a weird day." Then he looked at the commander's armor. "You should know," Raiden added. "Your suits are loud." The commander steadied himself. "You're a machine." Raiden's eyes narrowed slightly. "Aren't you?" That landed wrong. The commander barked, "You are abomination technology. You will be confiscated." Behind the Brotherhood line, raiders started shouting again, emboldened by confusion. One yelled, "Kick his ass, tin can!" Another screamed, "Yo, shiny man, cut their legs off!" Raiden's jaw tightened. He hated crowds. He hated noise. But mostly, he hated the way everyone kept trying to own him. Institute, capture. Brotherhood, confiscate. Raiders, strip for caps. No one asked what he wanted. No one ever did. Raiden took one slow breath, and something old, buried deep, stirred and stretched like a cat waking up. A voice he didn't like. A smile he didn't want. Jack. His grip on the sword tightened until the hilt creaked. The commander shouted, "Fall back! Regroup! Call for reinforcements!" Raiden stepped forward. "Don't run," he said softly. The commander raised his rifle again, hands trembling inside the armor. Raiden's eyes flickered red for a moment. Just a hint, a warning of what lived behind the restraint. "Don't make me chase you," he said. And then, blue light flashed again. Teleportation. More Institute signatures. The street filled with two kinds of authority, both convinced they were the righteous owner of violence. Raiders hid behind rubble, giggling and whispering. "Oh," one raider hissed, "this is gonna be good." Raiden looked at the new arrivals. Then the Brotherhood. Then the Raiders. And he smiled. Small, sharp, humorless. "All right," he murmured. "Now it's a party." Deep beneath the city, Institute scientists stared at the feed. A woman in a white coat whispered, "He dismantled power armor." Her colleague swallowed. "That shouldn't be possible." Another technician shook his head, fingers flying over a keyboard. "He's moving faster than our optics can track. The combat data it's obscene." Behind them, the director stood perfectly still. "No more small teams," the director said. A scientist glanced over. "Are you suggesting we deploy?" The director cut him off. "Coursers." The room went quiet. In the Brotherhood Sky Fortress, Elder Maxon watched his own feed with a tightening jaw. A Paladin officer spoke carefully. "Elder, if we hit him with a full squad," Maxon's voice was steel, "we will hit him with everything." The officer hesitated. "Sir, Maxon's eyes didn't leave the screen. "He is a walking cache of advanced technology," Maxon said, "and he is slaughtering my men." He turned sharply. "I will not have the Commonwealth thinking we can be challenged." On the screen, Raiden stood in the street like a knife in the center of a room full of fools. Maxon's voice lowered. "Bring him to me." Back on the street, the Institute reinforcements finished forming. A heavier unit stepped forward. Sleeker armor, different posture. Not a standard synth. Something better. The commander of the Brotherhood raised his weapon, yelling at Institute, "Stand down! This asset is Brotherhood property." The Institute unit replied without emotion. "Your claim is irrelevant." Raiders behind a wrecked bus were placing bets. 20 caps on Shiny Man," one shouted. 50 on the Tin Can Cult," another yelled. "They got rockets." A third raider, missing 2 fingers, grinned wide. Nah, my money's on the clean freaks. They got that poof magic." Raiden didn't look at the raiders. He didn't look at the rubble. He didn't even look angry. He just looked done. He raised his sword slightly, letting the blade catch the morning light. The hum deepened, a vibration that made loose glass tremble in the shattered windows. Raiden spoke quietly, but somehow everyone heard it. "Listen," he said, "I don't know your rules. I don't care about your flags." He took one step. "But I'm not going to be anyone's experiment." Another step. "I'm not going to be anyone's trophy." Another step. "And I'm definitely not going to be anyone's property." The Brotherhood commander fired. The Institute unit fired. The street lit up with laser fire from both sides, and Raiden moved like the answer to every threat. His blade became a silver line, cutting beams apart, cutting rifles in half, cutting armor at seams no one knew existed. He didn't fight like a man defending himself. He fought like a storm that had finally decided where to land. Raiders screamed with glee. "Yeah, get him! Cut that tin can's head off!" "Oh, he just did!" The Brotherhood line broke. The Institute formation adjusted. And in the heart of it all, Raiden's eyes flashed red again. Longer this time. Not fully unleashed, but enough. Like a door cracking open. Like teeth showing. Jack the Ripper smiling in the dark. Raiden's voice dropped to something almost intimate. "Now," he said, "you've got my attention." Boston didn't have a heartbeat anymore. It had echoes. Gunshots bouncing off dead concrete. Wind moaning through steel ribs. The occasional distant scream that could have been a person or a thing that used to be one. The Commonwealth was a place where time had stopped moving forward and started moving sideways, repeating its worst moments until someone finally died of boredom or violence. And then, into that endless loop. A new kind of violence walked in. Raiden stood in the middle of a wrecked street like a punctuation mark at the end of someone else's sentence. Around him, white armored bodies split cleanly into pieces that didn't make sense. Brotherhood power armor opened like tin cans. A bus smoldered in the gutter where a laser had kissed it too long. The air tasted like ozone and burning wire insulation. Somewhere nearby, raiders had turned the whole thing into entertainment. They crouched behind a blown-out kiosk and a tipped vending machine, throwing looks at the battlefield like kids watching a brawl through a chain-link fence. One raider, big shoulders, skinny legs, hair in stiff spikes, snickered. "Yo, you see that clean freak get chopped? That's the good slice, like deli meat." His friend, face painted in smeared red handprints, elbowed him. "Shut your mouth, you'll jinx it. If Shiny Man hears you, he'll slice your words out of your skull." A third raider, missing 3 fingers, leaned forward with religious awe. "I'm telling you, man, he's one of them, like pre-war angels." Spiky Hair barked a laugh. "Ain't no angels in Boston." Then louder, like he wanted to be heard. "Hey, Shiny, cut the tin cans next." The Brotherhood commander, still alive, still furious, snapped his helmet toward the noise as if raider stupidity was an insult to physics itself. "Raiders," he spat through external speakers, voice amplified and sick with disgust. "Vermin." A raider behind the kiosk yelled back, "Vermin got names, you walking fridge." His buddy wheezed with laughter. "Walking fridge, holy." Then the sky answered with rotor thunder. Whoop, 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 whoop. Vertibirds. Their shadows swept over the street like a judgment that didn't know who it was judging yet. The raiders flinched. Instinctive. Immediate. Raiders talked big until a flying gunship showed up. Then they remembered what they were. Meat with opinions. But they didn't run far. Not this time. Not with loot on the ground. Not with a show in progress. They just shifted positions, like hyenas moving around a lion, waiting for the moment to dart in and steal something. Raiden didn't look at the vertibirds. He didn't look at the raiders. His attention stayed on the clean blue flashes that had started all of this. Teleportation. The Institute. 6 synths had already tried to collar him and failed. More had arrived. And now something heavier in the air suggested the Institute had stopped being curious and started being serious. Raiden felt the shift, the same way he always did right before a battlefield changed gears. He exhaled through his nose. "All right," he murmured, almost bored. "Let's see how serious." A soft pop cracked the air again. Blue light formed between 2 broken storefronts, and something stepped out that made even raiders shut up for half a second. Not a blank-faced Gen 2, not a clean white soldier. This one moved like it had seen war in a laboratory and decided it preferred war in the street. A courser. Its coat was black like oil. Its armor plating was sleeker than the synths, less mass, more intent. It carried itself like the world owed it obedience. The courser's eyes settled on Raiden with the focus of a scope locking onto a target. Its voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. "Target acquired." Behind the kiosk, Spiky Hair whispered, "What the hell is that?" 3 fingers whispered back, "That's one of them boogeymen. Clean freaks send them when you're really messed up." Spiky Hair swallowed. "We should leave." Painted Hands didn't move. He stared like a gambler watching a wheel spin. "Nah, this is where it gets good." Raiden turned slightly toward the courser. The courser raised its weapon, a tight-humming Institute rifle built to do one thing: end fights. "You will be retrieved," it said, tone clinical and confident. "Do not resist." Raiden's mouth twitched. "You guys ever get tired of saying that?" he asked. "Or is it like a company slogan?" The courser fired. Not a simple laser. A pulsing, higher output beam, fast, chewing, meant to erode armor seams and stun nervous systems. Raiden met it with his blade. The high-frequency edge screamed as it took the energy. Sparks crawled along the sword like lightning trying to find a home. For the first time since arriving in the Commonwealth, Raiden's deflection wasn't effortless. The beam stuttered, split, snapped sideways into a wall and carved a glowing trench. The courser didn't react emotionally, but its posture shifted. Micro adjustments, a predator recognizing another predator. Raiden rolled his shoulder once where the heat had kissed his plating. "Okay," he said. "That's new." The Brotherhood commander saw the courser and his anger snapped into something sharper. "Institute!" he roared. "All units! Priority target! They're here for him!" A Brotherhood paladin landed from a rope behind the commander, armor heavier than the others, and brought a Gatling laser online. The weapon whined up with a sound that made raiders flinch. "Elder's orders," the paladin barked. "That cyborg is Brotherhood property. If he resists, cripple him." A raider hiding behind a mailbox snorted. "Cripple, yeah. Cripple the dude who turned your buddy into a jigsaw puzzle." "That's smart." Another raider perched on a car hood screamed, "Get him, Toaster Knights!" The paladin swung the Gatling laser and opened fire. The street became daylight. Beams poured out in continuous streams, hot and bright, ripping chunks from concrete and slicing through cars like a saw through meat. Raiders screamed and ducked. The Institute's synths repositioned, firing in controlled bursts. And Raiden advanced. He didn't retreat from the Gatling laser. He walked toward it like it was rain. His blade became a moving mirror, catching beams and splitting them, redirecting some into walls, letting others skim his armor harmlessly. The paladin tried to track him. The Gatling laser swung, but it was chasing a ghost. Raiden closed the gap in a blink. One strike. The Gatling laser came off its mount and fell in two pieces. The paladin froze, helmet turning, as if trying to understand how a sword just won against a heavy energy platform. Raiden grabbed the paladin's chest plate with one hand and lifted him off the ground. The paladin's boots kicked. Inside the helmet, the voice crackled, strained. "You don't understand what you are." Raiden held him there like a lesson. "I understand exactly what I am," Raiden said. Then he turned his head slightly toward the courser. "And I understand what you are." He dropped the paladin. The armored giant hit the pavement like a refrigerator falling downstairs. The Brotherhood commander shouted, "Fall back! Regroup! Call reinforcements!" Raiders cheered. "Run, fridges!" The courser didn't care about the Brotherhood. It slid sideways, putting debris between itself and their firing line, and kept its rifle trained on Raiden like the rest of the world didn't matter. "Approach not advised," the courser said. Raiden stepped toward it anyway. His voice was calm, almost curious. "What are you, a special model?" "Courser," it replied. "Course," Raiden repeated, amused. "Like you're a guided missile with a personality?" The courser fired again. Raiden deflected. The courser fired again. 2 pulses, then a third aimed not at Raiden's torso, but at the street under his feet. A trick. The concrete exploded. Dust and shrapnel jumped. Raiders screamed, "Oosh!" Raiden moved through it, using the blast like a stepping stone, springing forward. He landed in front of the courser. The courser's rifle transformed with a metallic click, a bayonet-like blade snapping into place. It lunged. Raiden met it. Steel shrieked. Sparks flew. They locked for a heartbeat, close enough to see details. Raiden saw faint pores in synthetic skin. The courser saw the precision behind Raiden's eyes, something beyond simple augmentation. "You are not standard human enhancement," the courser said. Raiden's reply came like a razor. "No kidding." He twisted and struck downward. The courser parried cleanly, then fired point blank. Raiden leaned just enough that the pulse burned past his cheek, leaving a thin scorch line across synthetic skin. He didn't react. The courser did. A micro step backward, a recalibration. Raiden smiled. "Found your edge," he said. The courser's voice tightened. Not emotional, but pressured. "Director will require your body intact." Raiden surged forward. "Tell your director." He swung. The courser dodged, but not fully. Raiden's blade took off its rifle hand at the wrist. The severed hand and weapon clattered onto the street, still humming. Raiders lost their minds. "He took his hand! Yo, he hand removed him! Shiny's a damn magician!" The courser didn't scream. It didn't curse. It simply recalculated. A built-in blade snapped out from its remaining forearm. It lunged for Raiden's throat seam. Raiden caught the arm, mid-thrust. Metal groaned. The courser's servos strained. Raiden's didn't. He tore the arm free and slammed the courser into a wall hard enough to spiderweb the brick. The courser's head snapped back. Its eyes stayed locked on Raiden, still trying to solve the problem of him. Behind them, Brotherhood fire and Institute beams crisscrossed, but the battlefield had subtly shifted. Everyone was watching the duel now, even if they pretended they weren't. Because this wasn't power armor versus raiders. This wasn't humans versus mutants. This was something else. Two weapons that belonged in different worlds colliding in a place that didn't deserve either. The courser's relay beacon flashed. A blue pulse began building under its skin. Emergency extraction. Raiden's eyes widened slightly. Oh no, you don't. He drove his sword into the courser's torso, pinning it to the wall. The extraction pulse wavered. The courser's body twitched. Raiden leaned in, close enough to be intimate. The courser spoke, voice finally frayed. Your violence profile is anomalous. Raiden stared at the courser's eyes and saw his own reflection. Silver face, hard lines, red optics threatening to ignite. He whispered, almost to himself, "You haven't seen anomalous yet." He twisted the blade. The blue pulse died. He pulled the sword free. The courser collapsed to the pavement, still present, still twitching, but out of the fight. Not dead, not alive in any way that mattered. For the first time since the blue flashes began, the Institute had lost something it didn't expect to lose, and the Commonwealth felt it. A hush fell, thin, fragile, stunned. Then the raiders broke it like glass. They surged out of hiding, screaming and laughing. Loot time! Get the cores! Take their guns! I called dibs on the clean freak coat! Raiders poured into the battlefield like rats into a pantry. One raider grabbed a power armor helmet and yanked. It didn't come off. He screamed anyway and started stabbing at it with a screwdriver like he could pry reality open. Another raider found the courser's severed hand and held it up like a trophy. Look, he yelled. Clean freak hand! I'm gonna wear it like a necklace. His friend cackled. Bro, you ain't got enough neck for that. A third raider dragged a fallen Brotherhood soldier by the leg, grunting. Give me them boots! I want boots that go clunk clunk! The Brotherhood commander's voice boomed with pure contempt. Raiders! Exterminate them! Brotherhood rifles turned and fired into the swarm. Raiders dropped. The survivors didn't retreat. They scattered and kept looting, because in their world, death was normal and caps were forever. A raider with a missing ear yelled while sprinting, You can't shoot me if I'm rich! Then he got shot. His friend stepped over him and grabbed his pockets. Thanks, Earl, the friend said cheerfully. You always was a giver. Raiden watched the raiders with a familiar, bitter fatigue. The Wasteland didn't need reasons to be awful. It was awful the way fire was hot. One raider, young, face smeared with ash, eyes bright, ran up to Raiden like he was approaching a celebrity. Yo! The kid shouted, breathless. You see that? You cut that clean dude like, dude, you're sick. Raiden stared at him. The kid grinned wider, missing a tooth. Can I touch your sword? Raiden's blade snapped up so fast the kid didn't see it move, just felt cold air against his fingers. He froze. Raiden's voice was calm, almost gentle. Don't. The kid swallowed hard and stumbled back. Yeah, cool. He ran. Behind him, his friends yelled, He almost got your hand, idiot! The kid shouted back, I know! I felt it! I felt my hand's future! The battlefield didn't slow down for comedy. It only widened. Because while raiders swarmed, the Institute did what it always did. Adjusted. Blue flashes popped in the distance. New synths arriving, taking positions not to win the street, but to shape it. They weren't trying to kill Raiden in a fair fight. They were building a box around him. And the Brotherhood, furious at the Institute, furious at the raiders, furious at the idea of losing control, did what it always did. They escalated. A new vertibird roared in low and hovered long enough for a heavier payload to drop. A crate hit the street with a thud. The sides blew off, and something inside unfolded. A heavier suit of power armor, custom plating, heavier frame, a walking monument to the Brotherhood's belief that bigger meant holier. A paladin stepped into it, locking in with practiced motions. The suit powered up with a deep, hungry hum. Raiders stared. Spiky hair whispered, "Oh, but that's the big fridge." Painted hands whistled. "That's the kind of fridge that kills you for looking at it." The big suit raised an arm. Mounted weaponry word. It spoke through external speakers in a voice like a sermon. "By order of Elder Maxon, this abomination will be seized." Raiden turned slowly, eyes tracking the suit. "And who the hell is Maxon?" he asked. The big suit didn't answer. It opened fire. The street became fire. Explosives tore into the ruins, shredding cover. A storefront collapsed. Raiders screamed, some in fear, some in delight. "He's doing it! He's doing the big booms! This is the best day of my life! I'm gonna die happy!" Institute synths retreated from the heavy fire, repositioning like pieces on a chessboard. The big suit wasn't there to fight the Institute. It was there to put Raiden down. Raiden moved. Blade mode surged, time thickening, the world stretching. He sprinted through the explosions, stepping between shards of shrapnel like they were raindrops. The heavy suit tracked him. It adjusted faster than the earlier troopers. Raiden's eyes narrowed. "Good," he said. "Finally." He closed in. The heavy suit swung a massive armored fist. Raiden ducked. The punch smashed a crater into the street. Raiden's blade flashed and carved into the suit's forearm plating, deep but not all the way through. The suit's armor was reinforced. Not enough, but enough to make it interesting. Raiden's smile grew just a fraction, and somewhere deep behind that smile, a different one leaned closer. Jack, the Ripper, whispering, "There you go, something that doesn't fall apart right away." Raiden struck again. The heavy suit tried to grab him. Raiden slipped under its arm, vaulted off its shoulder, and landed behind it. He drove his blade toward the power core housing, but the suit spun faster than expected and caught him mid-motion with a backhand. Raiden flew through a storefront wall. Glass exploded around him. He hit the floor, skidding through debris, and for the first time in this world, it felt like he'd been hit by something that meant it. His HUD flashed warnings. He ignored them. He rose. The heavy suit stepped into the ruined storefront, crushing broken furniture under its boots. Its voice boomed. "You will be brought to the Brotherhood." Raiden wiped dust from his cheek. "I'm not joining your cult," he said. The suit raised its weapon again. Raiden's eyes flickered red, longer than before. His voice lowered. "You're making me work for it." Outside, the Institute's synths shifted positions. They weren't firing much now. They were watching the heavy suit engage, letting the Brotherhood spend blood and ammo. Because the Institute didn't need the Brotherhood to win. The Institute needed Raiden tired. A synth spoke quietly into a relay beacon. "Phase 1 successful. Target is engaged. Continue hurting." Deep underground, the director watched the feed with a calm expression. "Good," the director said. "Let him fight." A scientist swallowed. "And if he wins?" The director didn't blink. "Then he will be softened. And if he doesn't?" A faint pause. "Then the Brotherhood will have saved us the trouble." Above the clouds on the Pridwin, Elder Maxon watched his own feed with a tightening jaw. A Paladin officer spoke carefully. "Elder, the Institute is present in force." Maxon's eyes stayed on Raiden. "I know. Should we redirect? Prioritize?" Maxon cut him off. "Do you see that?" he snapped, voice quiet but sharp enough to cut. "That thing is dismantling our holy armor." The officer hesitated. "Sir, he might not understand." Maxon's gaze hardened. "He understands violence." He leaned forward as Raiden stepped toward the heavy suit like he was stepping toward fate. "Bring more," Maxon ordered. "Bring everything." The officer's voice tightened. "Elder, if we keep escalating in the streets, civilian casualties." Maxon's eyes flashed. "There are no civilians," he said coldly. "Only threats or assets." He turned away from the screen, already moving. "And that cyborg is both." Back in the storefront, the heavy suit fired again. Raiden vanished sideways, blade cutting through the incoming stream. He surged forward, moving faster now, less restraint, more hunger. He struck the suit's elbow joint. The armor split. He struck the shoulder seam. The plating peeled. The heavy suit roared and swung wildly. Raiden ducked, rolled, and came up inside its guard. He drove his blade up into the suit's torso. The high-frequency edge screamed. The suit's plating resisted for a fraction longer than the others. Then it gave. Raiden shoved harder. The blade pierced through to the internal frame. The suit's lights flickered. The soldier inside gasped, voice suddenly human through the speakers. "No! No, wait!" Raiden paused. Just a pause. Because for a moment he heard that voice and it sounded like someone who didn't understand how small he was. Then the red glow in Raiden's eyes intensified, and the pause ended. He twisted the blade. The suit's power core housing cracked. Energy flared. The heavy armor shuddered and died. The suit collapsed forward. Raiden stepped back as it hit the floor with a crash. Outside, Raider screamed, "Shiny won! He killed the big fridge! I owe you 10 caps, you jerk!" But the cheers were swallowed by a new sound. Not rotorcraft, not gunfire. A low, escalating hum, like the air itself charging. Raiden's sensors screamed. Multiple teleport signatures. A lot of them. Not 6, not 12. Dozens. Blue flashes popped across the street, across rooftops, in alleys, inside ruined rooms, synths appearing like a plague of light. And among them, another courser, then another, and another. Raiders stopped cheering. Spiky hair whispered, that's too many clean freaks." Painted hands swallowed. "This ain't a fight now, this is a cleanup." Raiden stood in the ruined doorway, sword dripping, looking out at the street filling with white armor and black coats. The Institute had finished watching. Now it was surrounding. A courser stepped forward, voice smooth and confident. "Target," it said. "You will be retrieved." The Brotherhood commander, still alive, still stubborn, raised his weapon from behind cover and shouted, "Institute, stand down! He belongs to the Brotherhood!" The courser didn't even look at him. "Your claim is irrelevant." Raiders began backing away. One raider muttered, "I'm not dying for this." Another said, "We should rob somebody else." Three Fingers whispered, terrified now, "Shiny man, you got this, right?" Raiden didn't answer them. He looked at the circle forming around him. Institute, Brotherhood, Raiders. All of them thinking the same thing in their own words. Take him, use him, own him. Raiden exhaled slowly, and the voice inside him, the one that smiled when the world gave him an excuse, pressed close. They want the monster? Give it to them. Raiden's eyes glowed red. Not a flicker, not a hint, a steady burn. He raised his blade and the hum deepened into something predatory. His voice dropped, intimate and cold. "You don't get it," he said. The nearest courser tilted its head. "Clarify." Raiden smiled. Not the tired smirk from before. A sharper one. A smile that didn't belong in a man trying to be good. "You're not surrounding me," Raiden said it softly. He took one step forward. "You're just getting closer." And then, he moved. The Commonwealth didn't have laws. It had gravity. Everything fell eventually. People, buildings, promises, whole factions. It all hit the ground, broke, and got looted by someone with dirty fingernails and a grin full of missing teeth. Today, something else was falling. Control. The street where Raiden stood was no longer a battlefield. It was a diagram, a shape, a deliberate geometry of violence. Institute synths filled the rooftops and alley mouths, rifles held at identical angles. Coursers positioned themselves like scalpels, two on high ground, one behind a half-collapsed diner, another across the street in a broken second-story window. The Brotherhood formed a heavier, more obvious line, steel walls with booming voices and mounted firepower. Raiders hovered at the edges like flies, half laughing, half praying the world would stay distracted long enough for them to steal something expensive. And in the center, Raiden smiled as if he'd finally found the joke. "You're just getting closer," he said. Then he moved. Not as a blur this time. as a decision. He surged toward the nearest courser, straight into the ring, like he was punching through it, like he couldn't stand being the center of someone else's plan another second. The courser fired. Raiden cut the beam. A second courser fired from above. Raiden didn't even look up. His sword flicked and the beam split, carving the building behind him instead. Brick exploded outward. Dust rolled like smoke. The raiders screamed as if they were watching a fireworks show. Yes, Shiny Man's doing the thing. Cut him, cut him, cut him. Hey, Toaster Knights, clean freaks. Y'all want to see a magic trick? A Brotherhood paladin barked, shut them up. A knight replied, with what, sir? A sermon? Then the world became steel and light. Raiden hit the nearest courser in a collision of speed and intent. The courser's forearm blades snapped out. Raiden's sword met it. Sparks, a scream of metal, a bright spray that painted the air like shattered stars. The courser tried to pivot, trying to keep Raiden in front of it. Raiden refused the arrangement. He slipped sideways and cut the courser's knee joint. The courser dropped. Raiden spun and kicked it into a wall, hard enough to crack the concrete. He didn't finish it. He wasn't here to prove a point. He was here to break the circle. Synths opened fire from 3 directions. The air filled with beams. The street glowed with impacts. Raiders dove for cover, laughing and crying at the same time. This is why I don't go outside, one shrieked. Another raider yelled back, this is why I do. Raiden ran through it. Blade mode snapped on. Time thickening, the world becoming a slow-motion hallucination of violence and heat. Beams crawled, dust motes hung in the air like tiny planets. Raiden crossed the street in 2 steps and cut a synth in half. He didn't slow, he didn't stop. The blade came up again and took another synth's rifle off at the hands. He kicked that synth backward into its partner. Their bodies tangled on the pavement like discarded mannequins. The Institute didn't panic. The Institute adapted. A courser's voice cut in from the rooftops, calm as a lab report. Target is engaging perimeter. Initiate containment protocol. Blue relay flashes sparked at the far end of the street. Not reinforcements. Something else. Something heavy. A grid. Raiden's HUD lit with warnings. Electromagnetic signatures spiking. Field patterns forming. He felt it in his teeth first. A low hum rising. Like a cage being powered up. Ah, Raiden murmured. So that's the plan? The nearest courser stepped out of cover and spoke again, voice smooth and infuriatingly polite. Your cooperation will minimize damage. Raiden's eyes glowed red. Steady now. I'm done cooperating, he said. He moved again, straight for the courser, and the cage snapped shut. A crackling wall of blue energy erupted in a semicircle across the street, rising like a curtain. Another wall flared behind him, then 2 more, sealing the alleys. The energy field wasn't a simple barrier. It crawled along the ground, licking at metal, making wrecked cars spark and twitch. The air inside the field tasted like lightning. Raiders outside the cage stumbled back, hair lifting on their arms. Oh, hell no, Spiky Hair whispered. That's some clean freak witchcraft. Painted Hands, suddenly less amused, muttered. That's the kind of thing that turns your bones into soup. A raider with a bandaged eye laughed nervously. I'm not soup ready today. Brotherhood troops outside the field swore. What is that? A knight demanded. An Institute synth replied without looking at him. Containment. The Brotherhood commander slammed a fist into his armor plate. You will drop that field, now. The courser's voice didn't change. Your demands are irrelevant. And for a moment, the Brotherhood and the Institute, sworn enemies, stood on opposite sides of the same glowing cage, both staring at the same prize trapped inside. Raiden stood in the middle. He looked up at the field walls, eyes tracking the pattern, like he could feel the frequency. This is cute, he said. A courser called down from above. Your cybernetics will be disrupted if you attempt to breach. Surrender, Raiden smiled. I don't like cages, he said. Then he lunged. He hit the energy wall with his blade. The high-frequency edge screamed against the field. The air rippled. The wall warped. For a split second, it looked like he might cut through it. Then the field surged back, slamming a wave of force into him. Raiden skidded across the street, boots carving twin lines through ash and grit. His armor sparked where the energy had kissed it. His HUD flashed more warnings. Electrical interference, motor control resistance, power draw spikes. The cage wasn't just a barrier. It was a tuning fork, designed to aggravate cybernetics, to make his body fight itself. Raiden stood slowly, flexing his fingers as his servos recalibrated. "Okay," he said quietly. "That's actually interesting." The voice inside him, Jack, laughed. "You like it? Something finally bites back." Raiden's jaw tightened. "No," he whispered. "I don't." But his smile betrayed him. Inside the field, synths advanced. More cautious now, rifles raised, moving in overlapping arcs. Coursers stayed at the edges, not entering the cage fully, not risking it. They didn't need to. They thought the cage would do the killing. Raiden started walking toward the synth line anyway. Each step was steady. The synths fired. The beams struck his armor and skittered off, leaving scorched trails. Some hit the street, turning chunks of pavement into glass. Raiden kept walking. One synth shouted, monotone, "Cease movement." Raiden answered without stopping. "No." He reached the first synth. His blade flashed. The synth's head left its shoulders and bounced across the street. Raiden kicked the torso into its neighbor and moved through the opening like water through a crack. The synths tried to adjust. They tried to surround him inside the cage. He punished the attempt. A sword cut took out 3 rifles in one sweep. A kick shattered a synth's knee. Raiden grabbed a synth by the chest, turned it, and used it as a shield against incoming fire, then cut it in half and threw the pieces like junk. The cage hummed louder. It didn't like this. It surged again, pushing another wave into his systems. Raiden's movements stuttered for a fraction of a second. A fraction was enough. A courser outside the cage saw the opening and fired a special pulse into the field, an interference round that rode the energy like a rail. It hit Raiden in the shoulder. His HUD exploded in warnings. Servo lag, muscle fiber overload, pain signals amplified. Raiden hissed. Not from fear, from annoyance. "All right," he said, voice low. "You want to play dirty?" The synth line hesitated, because something changed in his tone. The air in the cage felt different, hotter, like the moment before a storm decides where to strike. Raiden looked up, straight at the courser who'd fired. Even through the distance and the blue haze, his red eyes locked like a promise. He spoke softly. "Next one of you that shoots me like that," he smiled, "I'm keeping the arm." Raiders outside the cage went wild, like the threat was a punchline. "He's gonna keep the arm. Shiny Man's starting a collection. Bro, I got a jar at home. You want a jar?" A Brotherhood knight muttered, "What is wrong with these people?" Another knight replied, deadpan, "Boston." Raiden moved again, faster now, pushing through the servo lag like it wasn't there, forcing his system to obey him through sheer will and violence. He reached the densest cluster of synths and exploded into motion. Blade mode wasn't fully on anymore. Not the careful, controlled version. This was rougher, more animal. The blade cut in arcs that weren't just efficient, but spiteful, severing limbs, carving rifles apart, splitting torsos down the center like he was peeling machines open to see what made them think they could own him. A synth tried to retreat. Raiden threw his sword, just for a heartbeat, pinning the synth to a wall through its chest. The blade vibrated there, humming like it was enjoying itself. Raiden ripped a fallen rifle from the ground and used it like a club to smash another synth's faceplate. He retrieved his sword with a flick, and the pinned synth fell off the wall in 2 pieces. The cage surged again and again. It pushed waves into him, trying to jam his limbs, trying to make him stumble. Raiden stumbled once, only once. He caught himself on one knee, blade tip scraping the pavement. Inside his skull, Jack leaned closer. "Let me drive." Raiden's teeth clenched. "No," he whispered. "You're already bleeding for them. You're already enjoying it. Let's stop pretending." Raiden's eyes flared red. A synth aimed at his head. Raiden looked up and smiled. He rose like a spring releasing. He crossed the distance and cut the synth's rifle in half, then cut the synth in half, then cut the concrete behind it in half for good measure. The remaining synths inside the cage backed away. Not fear, programming. A tactical assessment that had finally caught up. This wasn't containment. This was provocation. And provocation had consequences. Outside the cage, the Institute team adjusted their plan. A courser's voice spoke through a relay, calm and clinical. Phase 2 is compromised. Initiate relocation. Blue flashes sparked at the edges of the field. Raiden's HUD caught it. Faint patterns of a relay signature, like they were trying to move the cage. To drag him. To reposition the battlefield. To take him somewhere prepared. Raiden laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Oh," he said, "you're not just trapping me." He looked around, eyes narrowing. "You're transporting the trap." The Brotherhood commander outside the field realized it at the same time. "They're taking him," he roared. "Stop them!" A paladin raised a missile launcher and fired into the energy wall. The missile hit the field and detonated. The explosion rippled across the barrier like water, distorting it, but not breaking it. The blast threw raiders on their backs. A raider sat up coughing and yelled, "Brotherhood, you can't shoot the force field, idiots!" The Brotherhood commander snarled, "Silence!" The raider shouted back, "Make me, Fridge Daddy!" The courser ignored it all. "Relocation in 10 seconds, it said. Raiden looked up at the shimmering field, at the relay signatures building like a thundercloud. His system lagged again, his servos complaining, his internal power draw spiking. He had a choice. Stay inside the box and let it move him to wherever the Institute wanted him. Or break it now. Raiden's fingers tightened around his sword. He stared at the wall of energy again, and made a different choice. He didn't cut the wall. He cut the anchors. He pivoted and sprinted toward the far corner of the field, where a relay node shimmered faintly, an emitter disguised under rubble, projecting the barrier upward. The Institute hadn't expected him to see it that quickly. They'd assumed Wastelanders didn't think like machines. They'd assumed a machine wouldn't think like a man. They'd assumed wrong. Raiden slammed his blade down into the rubble and carved through the hidden emitter. The field flickered. Raiden sprinted to the next anchor. Cut. The field buckled again. A courser's voice sharpened. "Stop him!" Two synths outside the cage fired interference pulses into the wall. The pulses rode the field and struck Raiden's legs. His limbs locked for a heartbeat. He almost fell. Inside his skull, Jack laughed. "There it is. Let go. Let the violence fix it." Raiden's eyes burned. He forced his legs to move anyway. He reached the third anchor and cut it clean in half. The field screamed, an audible crackle like the air tearing. The cage destabilized. Raiden drove his blade into the final anchor with both hands and twisted. The emitter died. The energy wall collapsed like a curtain falling. The blue haze vanished. For a fraction of a second, everyone outside the cage blinked, like they'd forgotten what the world looked like without it. Then reality slammed back in, and Raiden was free. The Institute formation tensed immediately, coursers repositioning, synths raising rifles. The Brotherhood line surged forward, shouting and firing. Raiders cheered like the cage collapsing was the punchline they'd been waiting for. "He broke the clean freak box. Shiny Man said no jail. I'm naming my firstborn Shiny." Raiden didn't acknowledge any of it. He turned his gaze toward the Institute, toward the coursers, toward the ones who thought they could drag him like a sample in a lab tray. He spoke softly. "My turn." And then, the Institute enacted the real trap, because the cage had only been Act 1. The true snare wasn't meant to hold him. It was meant to bait him. A blue flash popped behind the Institute line. Not a synth, not a courser. A human, huddled, shaking, bound at the wrists, appeared on the pavement like someone dropped them there. A woman, maybe. Dirty face, eyes wide with panic. Her voice cracked in the silence. "Help!" Raiders froze, confused. Brotherhood soldiers hesitated, trained to see civilians as clutter but still human enough to register a scream. Even Raiden's motion stuttered. A hostage. The Institute used hostages? The woman's eyes found Raiden, silver man with a sword, red eyes, a predator's stillness. She sobbed. Please! Raiden took one step toward her, then another. A courser spoke, voice calm. Target demonstrates protective response to civilian distress. Raiden stopped. His eyes narrowed, and his voice dropped into something dangerous. That's not random, he said. The woman's sob became a choke. Her body shifted. Her skin rippled. Her posture straightened. Her eyes went blank. A synth in a human skin mask. A decoy. The Institute didn't just want to trap him. They wanted to understand him, to map his triggers, to learn what made him hesitate. Raiden stared at the decoy, and the red in his eyes flared like an insult. He spoke quietly. You tried to trick me into being human. The decoy synth's mouth moved, voice now monotone. Compliance? Raiden cut its head off mid-word. The head rolled and hit a curb with a hollow clack. The raiders reacted like they'd seen a magic trick. Oh my God, he cut the crying lady! Wait, she was fake! Clean freaks got actors now! A Brotherhood knight shouted. Institute deception confirmed. The Institute didn't care. Because while Raiden's attention had been on the decoy, the ground beneath him clicked. A pressure plate. A pre-war subway access hatch, half buried under debris. The Institute had seeded the street with an old-world mechanism. They'd wired it. They'd turned the dead city into a trapdoor. The hatch blew open. Raiden dropped. The street vanished above him. Air rushed. Light disappeared. He fell into darkness and steel and old tunnel stink. He twisted midair, blade out, trying to catch the edge. His sword struck metal. Sparks. He slowed, landed hard on a slanted platform, and slid into an underground corridor. The world above became muffled chaos. Shouts, explosions, rotor thunder. Below, it was quiet. Quiet in the way that meant something was waiting with its mouth open. Raiden rose in the dark tunnel. His HUD adjusted to low light. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with cracked tile and rusted rail tracks. Faint Institute relay beacons glowed like eyes in the distance. Then a speaker crackled to life in the tunnel. A voice, calm, clinical, almost amused. Not a courser, not a synth. A human voice transmitted cleanly. The surface is inefficient, the voice said. Too many variables. Raiden's eyes narrowed. Who is this? A pause like the speaker enjoyed the question. The one you keep interrupting, the voice replied. Director. Raiden breathed once, steadying. You're the one sending machines after me. Yes. And you're the one putting civilians in front of guns. Another pause. Those were decoys. That's not better. The director's voice remained calm, unbothered. I am not seeking your approval. I am seeking your compliance. Raiden laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed down the tunnel. Here's my answer. He lifted his sword slightly. The blade hummed, bright in the darkness. The director continued as if Raiden hadn't spoken. Your cybernetics are unique. Your energy systems are unknown. Your blade technology is unprecedented. Your body is not yours, Raiden said. A beat. Then, very faintly, the director's voice sharpened. Everything is ours eventually. Raiden stared down the tunnel where Institute lights waited like teeth. I've heard that before, Raiden said. The red in his eyes burned brighter. And I cut that guy in half too. He began walking forward. Not running, walking. Because now it wasn't a fight in the street with raiders screaming and Brotherhood preaching. Now it was a corridor, a funnel, a place designed for an execution. And Raiden was walking into it like he was the one holding the axe. The tunnel lights flickered. A blue flash popped ahead. A courser appeared in the corridor, alone. It carried a different weapon, bulkier, humming with interference energy, built to disrupt cybernetics and stun nervous systems. It raised the weapon. Target, it said. You are contained. Raiden kept walking. The courser fired. A wave of interference rolled over Raiden like a punch. His muscles locked. His vision stuttered. His HUD screamed. Pain flared. Real pain, amplified. Raiden's knees bent. He almost fell. In his skull, Jack laughed like a door finally opening. There it is. Let me do it. Raiden gritted his teeth. No. The courser fired again. Raiden's body locked harder. His sword trembled in his hand. The courser stepped closer, confident now. "You will be retrieved intact," it said. Raiden's voice came out low, strained. "Stop saying that." The courser didn't stop. It raised the weapon for a third shot. Raiden's eyes snapped up, red, burning. He whispered, so softly it almost wasn't sound. "Fine." And something inside him gave way. Not a full surrender, not a mindless berserk, a controlled unlocking, a choice to stop pretending he was still playing by anyone else's rules. Raiden's systems surged. His servos screamed back to life. He moved. He didn't dodge the third shot. He stepped through it, forcing his body to obey his will, riding the interference like a wave instead of drowning in it. The courser's eyes widened fractionally, its first real sign of surprise. Raiden closed the distance and drove his sword through the interference weapon, splitting it cleanly. Then he grabbed the courser by the throat, lifted it, pinned it to the wall. The courser's legs kicked slightly, servos whining. Raiden leaned in close. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "You wanted to learn what makes me hesitate," Raiden said. He smiled. "Here's the lesson." He tightened his grip. The courser's neck joint creaked. Raiden didn't break it yet. He held it there, forced it to look at him. "I don't hesitate," Raiden whispered. "I choose." Then he tore the courser's head off. The head came free with a wet mechanical snap. Blue fluid sprayed the wall like paint. Raiden dropped the body and let it crumple. The tunnel was quiet again. And somewhere on the speaker system, the director didn't speak for a full 2 seconds. When the voice returned, it was still calm. But it wasn't amused anymore. "Noted," the director said. Raiden wiped blue fluid from his hand. "Good," he replied. "Take notes faster." He walked forward into the tunnel's deeper darkness, because now the Institute had done the worst thing you can do to someone like Raiden. They tried to control him. They tried to study him. And they dragged him underground into a maze built by people who thought they owned the future. Raiden's smile faded. The red in his eyes stayed. And Jack, quietly pleased, stood closer behind his thoughts now, like a shadow that finally felt welcome. Up above, the Commonwealth was still exploding. Brotherhood troops and Institute synths were still shooting at each other. Raiders were still looting the dead and laughing at the sky. But the true fight had moved. Down here in steel tunnels and clean relay lights. Down here where the Institute could watch every angle. Down here where the director believed they had turned the battlefield into a laboratory. Raiden stepped over the courser's body and whispered, almost fondly, "You built a maze." He lifted his sword. The blade hummed like a hungry animal. "Let's see if it bleeds." The Institute loved clean lines, clean floors, clean lighting, clean equations, clean control. Down here, beneath the rot and rust and screaming wind of the Commonwealth, everything was bright and white and certain. A place built by people who believed the world ended because it lacked order. And that order could be manufactured like any other product. And then Raiden walked into it. Not through a front door, not with permissions, not with a badge, a code, or a mission briefing. He walked in the way war always arrived. Through the weakest point, through the mistake, through the confidence that said, he can't possibly get here. The corridor ahead glowed with sterile light, white panels, smooth corners, clean air that smelled like filtered nothing. The floor reflected his silver body back at him, an unnatural mirror of a man who did not belong. Behind him, in the tunnel, the city sounded distant and muffled, explosions and rotor thunder fading, as if the world above was a dream and this place was reality. Raiden preferred the dream. At least dreams admitted they were lies. A speaker crackled. The director's voice arrived with the calm of a scalpel. "You are proceeding toward a restricted sector." Raiden didn't stop walking. "Yeah," he said. "I noticed. You cannot reach me." Raiden's eyes flickered red, steady, controlled. "I'm already here," he replied. A pause, then softer, like the director was allowing curiosity to leak through the discipline. "Your body is extraordinary. Your response to containment suggests adaptive neuromuscular architecture beyond anything pre-war. Your blade technology?" Raiden smiled without humor. "Still doing the sales pitch?" he asked. You want to give me a tour and a gift bag too? The director didn't rise to it. There is a version of this, the voice said, where you cooperate, where you become an asset instead of a problem. Raiden's footsteps were the only sound between them for a moment. Then he answered, voice low and flat. I've been an asset. He passed a glass observation window. Inside, a lab with half-disassembled synth parts on tables like butchered mannequins. Robotic arms hung overhead. A scientist stared at him through the glass, eyes wide and terrified, as if the Institute's walls had always protected her from consequence, and she just learned they were made of paper. Raiden looked straight ahead. I've been a weapon, he continued. I've been someone's solution. He turned a corner. And I've been someone's mistake. The director's voice stayed calm. Then you understand your value. Raiden's smile sharpened. I understand what people do to valuable things. He drew his blade, not fully, just enough to let the hum speak. I break the ones who try to own me. The Institute didn't send synths at him in open waves anymore. That was inefficient. That was wasteful. That was surface behavior. Down here they fought like engineers. Lights dimmed in the corridor ahead. Panels shifted. A section of ceiling slid open without sound and released something that dropped into the hallway with the grace of a guillotine. Not a synth. A drone, sleek, angular, humming with interference energy. Then another. Then four more. They floated at head height, arranged in a precise line, their lenses focusing on Raiden like eyes adjusting to a specimen. A speaker embedded in the wall spoke with the director's voice. Your cybernetics are vulnerable to electromagnetic disruption. The drones pulsed in unison. A wave rolled over Raiden. His HUD flashed hard warnings. Servo lag. Balance destabilization. Motor control damping. His body resisted him like gravity had doubled. He felt it, like someone had poured molasses into his joints. Raiden exhaled. Finally, he said, a real attempt. The drones fired. Not bullets, not lasers. Interference darts, small, fast, designed to stick into plating seams and inject jamming pulses directly into the body. Two struck his shoulder and thigh. Raiden's limbs locked for a heartbeat. He nearly stumbled. The drones tightened their formation, advancing. The director's voice continued, clinical and pleased. You can be stopped. Raiden's eyes flared red. He smiled. You can slow me down. He stepped forward anyway. It took effort now, not because he was weaker, but because the Institute was finally forcing him to pay for each movement, like a toll booth built out of science and arrogance. Raiden raised his blade. The sword hummed louder. He swung. The nearest drone split cleanly in half, its interference pulse dying mid-flight. The second drone tried to retreat. Raiden threw a metal shard, ripped from a wall panel with raw strength, like a dart. It punched through the drone's lens. The drone fell, sparking. The remaining drones pulsed again. Raiden's muscles seized harder. Pain signals flared, amplified deliberately, as if the Institute had found a dial labeled suffering and turned it for data collection. Raiden's jaw clenched. You're learning, he muttered. The drones advanced again. Raiden's voice dropped into something colder. But you're learning too slow. He activated blade mode, not fully, not elegantly, just enough to sharpen time. The world thickened. The drone's pulses crawled. Raiden moved through the stiffness like a man moving through deep water, still fast, still lethal, but now with resistance. He cut two drones out of the air. The last drone pulsed again at point-blank range. The interference hit Raiden like a hammer. His vision stuttered. His sword dipped. For a fraction of a second, he was vulnerable. For a fraction of a second, the Institute got what it wanted. And then, inside his skull, Jack smiled wider. Let me. Raiden's fingers tightened until the sword hilt creaked. He whispered, no. Then louder, to the drone, to the director, to the walls. But I don't need you to stop. He grabbed the drone with his free hand. Its interference pulse jammed against his palm, trying to lock his fingers. Raiden's grip tightened anyway. Metal screamed. He crushed it. The drone's pulsing died inside his fist. Raiden opened his hand. Sparks and broken pieces fell to the floor like dead insects. The corridor lights brightened again, and the director was quiet for a full breath. Then the voice returned, slightly less smooth. "Your resistance is remarkable." Raiden started walking again. "Save the compliments," he said. "I'm not here for a performance review." He passed more glass rooms, more labs, more scientists watching him like he was a hurricane pressed against the window. Some looked terrified. Some looked fascinated. One looked angry, like the very idea of consequences offended them. Raiden saw a child, too clean, too well-fed, too young to understand what Wasteland meant, standing behind an adult's legs, peeking out with wide eyes. The child whispered, "Is that a synth?" The adult didn't answer. The adult was shaking. Raiden didn't stop. He didn't raise his sword. He didn't speak to them. Because he knew something about systems. The people inside always believed the system was bigger than them, until the system failed. Then they remembered that they were just people again. A door ahead locked with a soft hiss. A wall panel lit up with a symbol, "Authorized personnel only." Raiden stared at it for half a second. Then he cut the door open. The high-frequency blade made the lock irrelevant. The metal parted with a smooth, obscene ease. Raiden stepped through, and the Institute finally revealed what it thought he deserved. The room beyond was wider, an open atrium with clean balconies and sterile trees and planters, like someone had recreated nature from a textbook. Light panels overhead simulated sunlight. Beautiful. Fake. A dozen coursers stood in formation across the far side of the atrium. Not two, not three, a dozen. Their black coats were identical, their weapons held at identical angles, their faces calm. A choir of killers. One stepped forward. Its voice was smooth, more human than the synths, less human than it wanted to sound. "You have reached containment point Theta." Raiden looked at the formation and exhaled slowly. "That's a lot of you," he said. The courser replied, "You will not proceed further." Raiden's sword hummed. He took one step forward. "Try," he said. The coursers moved. It wasn't a brawl. It wasn't chaos. It was a design. Coursers split into 3 units. 4 flanked left, 4 flanked right. 4 advanced straight down the center like a spear. Their rifles fired in overlapping patterns, not to kill him immediately, but to force him into lanes. They weren't shooting at where he was. They were shooting at where he could be. The Institute had learned. Raiden felt it in the way beams snapped into empty space where he'd planned to move, in the way interference pulses hit the floor ahead of him like mines. He smiled. "Good," he murmured. "You're trying." He moved anyway. Blade mode surged. The world slowed. Raiden dashed through a narrow gap between 2 beam streams, cutting one rifle in half, then the courser holding it, then spinning to deflect a pulse that would have hit his neck seam. A courser lunged with a forearm blade. Raiden parried and kicked it backward off balance. He didn't finish it. He couldn't afford mercy here. Another courser fired an interference round that hit his chest plating. Pain flared. His servos lagged. A third courser tried to exploit the lag, rushing into grapple. Raiden's eyes burned red. He grabbed the grappler's wrist and twisted until the arm tore free. He used the severed arm like a club, smashing it into another courser's faceplate. Blue fluid sprayed. The coursers adapted mid-fight. They stopped trying to surround him fully. They started rotating. One attacked, 2 supported, 1 withdrew, like an endless wheel of pressure designed to wear him down. Raiden's movements grew sharper, less wasted motion, more lethal intent. He cut a courser's leg off at the knee and let it fall. He drove his blade through another shoulder seam and ripped downward, peeling armor open. He caught an interference pulse on his sword and redirected it into a courser's chest. The courser's system stuttered, its posture faltering. Raiden took its head off. The atrium began to look less clean. Blood, blue and red, splattered across white tile. Broken weapons littered the floor. A planter exploded as a beam missed. Sterile trees burned like paper. The Institute's fake sunlight looked harsher now, as if the ceiling itself disapproved. A courser backed away, recalculating, and spoke, its voice slightly strained. You are degrading. Surrender. Raiden's smile widened. Is that what you call this? He asked. He surged forward. A courser fired point blank. Raiden stepped into the beam, letting it scorch his armor, and cut the courser in half from shoulder to hip. He didn't slow. He spun, blade catching another's rifle and slicing it apart. He kicked a courser off a balcony. It fell, hit the tile with a heavy crack, and tried to rise. Raiden didn't let it. He threw his sword. The blade pinned the courser to the floor through the chest. Raiden walked over, grabbed the hilt, and ripped it free. The pinned courser spasmed and went still. The wheel of pressure finally broke, because there weren't enough of them left. Only 3 remained standing. They looked at the bodies. They looked at Raiden. Scorched armor, red eyes, sword dripping. And for the first time, their voices weren't perfectly smooth. Target! Raiden interrupted by moving. One courser tried to fire. Raiden cut its rifle and its hands in the same motion. The courser stared at its missing hands like it couldn't reconcile the concept. Raiden ended the confusion. The second courser tried to retreat toward a door. Raiden caught it by the back of the coat and slammed it into the door hard enough to dent the panel. Then he cut it down the spine. The last courser raised both hands slowly, not surrender, just an empty tactical gesture. Director has observed sufficient. Raiden's blade stopped at the courser's throat, so close that the hum vibrated in its synthetic skin. Raiden's voice was quiet. You know what's funny? He asked. The courser didn't answer. Raiden smiled. Your director thinks this is data. He leaned in. I think it's a message. He pulled the blade back and struck. Clean, swift. The last courser fell. Silence spread across the atrium. White tile soaked with color. Fake trees burning. Sterile perfection ruined. Raiden stood in the wreckage and listened. No alarms, no screaming. Just the soft hum of his blade and the faint sound of the Institute's air system continuing to circulate clean air through a place that was no longer clean. The speaker crackled. The director's voice returned, no longer amused, no longer relaxed. You have made your point. Raiden looked up at the ceiling panels like he could see the person behind them. I'm not done, he said. While the Institute tried to stay clean underground, the surface turned into a riot. The trapdoor that had swallowed Raiden had also broken the street open like a wound. Brotherhood forces had flooded the block, trying to force entry into the tunnels. Institute synths had repositioned to prevent it. And the Raiders treated the entire thing like a festival. Somewhere behind a collapsed wall, painted hands yelled, I told you it'd get good. Spiky hair shouted back, it got too good. A bandaged Raider sprinted by, carrying a power core like it was a newborn. Move, he screamed. I'm holding a son. Another Raider yelled, put it in your pocket. I ain't got a pocket that strong. The Brotherhood commander screamed orders into the chaos. Secure the perimeter. Stop looting. Stop shooting each other, damn it. A knight replied, Sir, the Raiders are stealing our ammo. The commander roared, then shoot them. We are, sir. A Raider yelled, you gotta aim, Fridge. Above them, vertibirds circled like vultures. The Pridwin hovered in the distance, a steel cathedral casting a long shadow. And inside that cathedral, Elder Maxon watched the surface battle feed, then the underground feed. He saw white corridors. He saw clean floors. He saw his enemy's sanctuary. Then he saw Raiden standing in the atrium, surrounded by courser bodies like he'd just finished a warm-up. Maxon's jaw tightened. He's inside, Maxon said. A Paladin officer hesitated. Elder, the Institute is fortified. If we breach, casualties. Maxon cut him off. There is no cost too high, he said coldly. That technology will not remain unclaimed. The officer swallowed. And the cyborg? Maxon's eyes narrowed. Bring him out, he said, or bury him with them. Raiden moved deeper. The Institute tried doors. He cut them. The Institute tried gas, sleeping agents, chemical dispersal. Raiden's filters sealed. The Institute tried lights, strobing panels designed to disrupt perception. Raiden's optics adjusted. They tried the floor, magnetic locks that grabbed his feet. Raiden tore free. He was moving through a maze that kept changing shape, But the Institute had forgotten something simple. A maze only works on something trying not to break the walls. Raiden broke walls. He reached a larger corridor with a single door at the end, not marked with warnings, not labeled with authority. Just there. It looked too normal, which meant it was important. The speaker crackled. "You have arrived," the director said. Raiden stopped in front of the door. "You hiding behind it?" Raiden asked. "I am behind everything," the voice replied. Raiden smiled. That's the kind of sentence people say right before they find out they aren't. The door hissed open. Raiden stepped into a room that wasn't a lab. It was an office. Clean, minimalist, expensive in a world where expensive was a moral failure. A desk, a chair, a window looking into a simulated garden like someone needed to pretend nature still existed. And standing near the desk, a human. Older than Raiden expected, or younger. Hard to tell in this place where time was controlled. Pale from living underground. Eyes sharp. Not in armor. No gun in hand. Just a person with posture like power. The director. They looked at Raiden like he was a storm they'd calculated and still failed to predict. "You're not a machine," the director said quietly. Raiden's sword hummed. "And you're not a ghost," Raiden replied. "So why talk through speakers?" The director's expression didn't change. "Because speakers cannot be killed," the director said. Raiden stepped forward one pace. "Neither can you," Raiden said, "if you stop being arrogant and start being smart." The director tilted their head slightly. "That is your offer? Advice?" Raiden's smile faded. "No," he said. "That was me being polite." The director's gaze shifted briefly to the sword. "That blade is—" Raiden interrupted. "Don't," he warned. "Don't start listing what I am like you're reading a spec sheet." The director's eyes hardened. "You are dangerous," the director said. Raiden nodded once. "Yeah." The director took a slow breath. "You could be useful." Raiden's eyes flared red again. "There it is," he said softly. The director leaned forward slightly, voice calm and persuasive. "Imagine what you could do with our resources. Your body repaired, enhanced, your systems integrated, your suffering ended." Raiden laughed, a short, cold sound. "You think you can end suffering with a white floor and a clipboard?" The director's voice sharpened. "We end chaos." Raiden's tone turned razor flat. "You manufacture it." The director's expression tightened. "You do not understand what it took to keep humanity alive." Raiden stepped closer. "I've seen what people call necessary," he said. "I've watched them build hells and name them salvation." He leaned in. "And you know what always happens?" The director didn't blink. Raiden smiled. "Someone walks in with a sword." Silence. Then the director's hand moved, subtle, controlled, toward a small console embedded in the desk. Raiden's eyes tracked it instantly. "Don't," Raiden said again. The director pressed the console. The room's lights flickered. A low hum began under the floor. Raiden's HUD exploded with warnings. "Remote cybernetic interface attempt detected. Signal intrusion. High priority motor control override attempt." Raiden's limbs stiffened. His fingers tightened around his sword involuntarily. Pain flared as his systems fought something external. The director watched him with cold focus. "Your body is a network," the director said. "Everything that is a network can be accessed." Raiden's jaw clenched. "You think you can hack me?" The director's eyes narrowed. "I know I can." Raiden's servos locked. For a heartbeat, the director's trap worked perfectly. Raiden frozen, captured not by chains but by code. The director stepped forward, slowly. "Now," the director said softly, "you will kneel." Raiden's eyes burned red. Inside his skull, Jack whispered like a smile. "Let me." Raiden's lips parted slightly. He whispered, "No." The director watched, almost curious. "You are resisting," they observed. Raiden's voice turned lower. "You're not the first person," he said, "to try controlling me from behind his screen." The director's hand hovered near the console again. "I do not need to try," the director said. "I am doing it." Raiden's sword trembled. His knees bent a fraction, forced down. The director's face remained calm. Raiden's eyes lifted, and the red glow intensified into something predatory. He smiled. Not polite, not tired, a smile with teeth. "You're doing it," Raiden agreed. Then his voice sharpened like the edge of his blade. "But you're doing it to the wrong part of me." The director frowned, just slightly. "What?" Raiden's systems surged. Not cleanly, not safely. He overrode the override by sheer brute force, forcing power through circuits the way a man forces breath through crushed ribs. Pain detonated. Raiden didn't care. His limbs snapped free. He moved. In one motion, he crossed the space between them and drove the sword into the desk console. The high-frequency blade split the console and the desk and the floor panel beneath, with a clean, screaming cut. The hum under the floor died. The director stumbled back a step, finally showing something like shock. Raiden advanced. "You wanted to make me kneel," Raiden said softly. He lifted the sword. "Here's the thing." The director's voice tightened. "You cannot kill me and leave this place intact." Raiden tilted his head. "I wasn't planning to." The director's eyes widened. Raiden smiled. "Now you understand." Alarms finally started screaming. Not polite beeps. Full, desperate sirens that sounded like the Institute's walls had learned fear. Lights flashed red. Doors slammed. Raiden didn't chase the director. He didn't need to. He turned toward the heart of the Institute. The reactors, the relay core, the infrastructure that made this place possible. Because killing one person didn't fix a system. Breaking the system did. The director shouted behind him, voice sharp now. "You do not know what you are destroying." Raiden didn't look back. "I know exactly what it is," he said. He cut a door, stepped through, cut another. Scientists ran from him like mice from fire. One shouted, "Stop, please! Think about the future." Raiden's voice didn't soften. "Think about the present," he said. A synth squad appeared at the end of a corridor. They fired. Raiden sprinted through the beams and carved them apart, pieces hitting the floor in clean segments. He reached a chamber where the Institute's relay systems pulsed, blue light cycling, teleport architecture humming like a heartbeat. This was their spine, their magic trick, their advantage. Raiden walked toward it. A scientist stepped in front of him, shaking. "You can't," the scientist pleaded. "You'll kill us all." Raiden's eyes flicked to her. She was terrified. Human. Not a machine. Not a courser. Just a person inside a monster. Raiden's grip tightened. For a second, the old restraint tried to rise. Then the memory of the decoy, fake sobs, fake civilian distress, a trap built on empathy, snapped through him like a wire. His voice was quiet. "Get out of my way," he said. The scientist didn't move fast enough. Raiden didn't cut her. He moved past her with a burst of speed that knocked her to the floor, hard but alive. He raised the sword to the relay core. The hum deepened. The blade vibrated. And then, he struck. The relay core split. Blue light erupted. The room flared like a star. Teleportation systems screamed and died. The Institute's heartbeat stuttered. Across the facility, lights flickered. Doors jammed. Screens went blank. A clean world began to choke. Raiden turned and walked toward the reactor chamber. Because he wasn't finished. And because above him, in the surface world, the Brotherhood was still trying to claim what he refused to be. The Institute's failure rippled upward. On the surface, synths flickered as their command links stuttered. Coursers hesitated. Brotherhood soldiers shouted. "What's happening?" a knight yelled. A paladin replied, "Institute signals are dropping." A raider screamed, delighted. "The clean freaks are lagging." Another raider yelled, "Hit 'em while they buffer." Raiders surged into the confusion, looting with renewed enthusiasm. Painted hands waved a stolen Brotherhood flag like it was a joke. "Look at me! I'm a toaster knight!" Spiky hair shouted, "Stop playing dress up and run!" Painted hands laughed. "Run where? Life's a joke!" A vertibird fired down into the street to clear raiders. Raiders scattered, screaming insults. "Your mom's a vertibird!" "You can't shoot me, I'm symbolic!" Then the ground trembled. A deep vibration, not an explosion, not a crash. A structural groan, like the earth itself was shifting. The Brotherhood commander looked down at the cracked street where the trapdoor had opened. The opening widened. Dust poured out. Heat rose. A voice from a nearby comm unit crackled with panic. "Sir, readings from underground are spiking. Something's happening down there." The commander's amplified voice shouted back. "Seal the breach, now!" A knight yelled, "With what, sir?" The commander shouted, "With anything!" Raiders nearby started backing away, suddenly less amused. Spiky hair whispered, "Okay, that's bad. That's bad. Painted Hands stopped laughing. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's the kind of bad that don't care if you're funny." Deep underground, Raiden reached the reactor chamber. The Institute had built it like a temple. White rails, perfect geometry, clean panels around a core that glowed with controlled power. The director's voice returned on a speaker, no longer calm, now edged with fear masked as authority. "Stop," the director said. "If you breach the reactor, the Institute will be destroyed." Raiden stared at the reactor. "That's the point," he said. "You will kill innocents," the director snapped. Raiden's eyes narrowed. "You built a world where innocent means useful," he said. "Don't lecture me about morality." The director's voice lowered, almost pleading. "There are children here." Raiden's grip tightened. For a heartbeat, the sentence tried to land. Then Raiden remembered the surface. Raiders, settlements, fear, the Institute snatching people, replacing them, turning families into experiments. Raiden's voice was quiet. "Then you should have built something better," he said. He raised his sword. The blade hummed, and he cut the reactor casing. Warning sirens screamed. The core flared brighter. Heat slapped his armor. Panels exploded. Raiden cut again, deeper. The reactor's containment field wavered. The Institute's clean world began to die loudly. A synth squad rushed in, last-ditch security. Raiden turned, cut them down in 3 motions, then returned to the reactor like he was finishing a job. One final strike. The containment failed. The core erupted. Not as a simple explosion, as a controlled apocalypse. Blue-white light filled the chamber. Heat roared. The Institute's perfect lines melted. Raiden turned and ran, not from fear, but from timing. He sprinted toward the surface access corridors, forcing speed through smoke and falling panels. The facility shook. Walls cracked. Clean floors split open. The Institute, so proud of being untouched by the Wasteland, became rubble like everything else. Raiden reached a vertical access shaft. Above, the surface opening, cracked and widening. Below, collapse. Raiden leaped. His hands caught the shaft edge. He pulled himself upward with brutal strength. The explosion behind him surged like a tide. He climbed. Fast. Hard. The shaft shook. Panels fell. He pushed harder. He burst out of the breach in the street like a demon climbing out of hell. The surface world saw him. Brotherhood soldiers froze. Raiders screamed. Synths, what remained, stuttered as their systems died. Raiden landed on the cracked pavement as the ground behind him erupted in a pillar of light and dust. The street buckled. Cars flipped. A shockwave rolled outward. The Commonwealth skyline flickered as the underground power died. For a moment, everyone stared at Raiden. Silver armor scorched, sword in hand, red eyes glowing. Painted Hands whispered, voice full of awe and terror. "Shiny man, he just killed the clean world." Spiky hair swallowed. "He ain't shiny, man," he muttered. He's the end." Raiden looked up. Above the ruins, the Pridwin hovered. Steel cathedral, Brotherhood symbol, a declaration that someone still believed in authority. And in that cathedral, Elder Maxton watched Raiden step out of the smoking breach like a myth made real. Maxton's voice crackled through loudspeakers, amplified across the battlefield. "Cyborg!" Raiden's head turned slightly. Maxton continued, voice like iron. "You have destroyed a technological treasure of humanity. You will surrender yourself and your weapon to the Brotherhood of Steel." Raiders laughed hysterically. One yelled, "He just blew up the clean freaks, And you asking him for his sword? Another screamed, Brotherhood got no survival instinct. Raiden stared up at the airship. His sword hummed faintly. He spoke, voice calm but caring. I'm not your treasure, he said. Maxon's reply came instantly. Everything you are is technology. Technology must be controlled. Raiden's eyes narrowed. You sound just like the Institute, he said. Maxon's voice sharpened. Do not compare us to them. Raiden smiled. Same obsession, he said. Different uniform. Maxon paused, only a beat. Then his voice turned colder. Paladins, prepare strike. Vertibirds shifted overhead. Weapons angled down. Brotherhood forces on the street raised rifles. Raiden looked around at them. Steel men with rules. Raiders with laughter. A wasteland that had never asked him to be anything except violent. Raiden exhaled. The red in his eyes dimmed slightly. Not extinguished, but controlled. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. This world doesn't need another army. Then he raised his voice. It needs fewer people who think they own it. Maxon roared through the speakers. Fire! The Commonwealth didn't mourn the Institute. It didn't celebrate it either. It did what it always did. It absorbed. The crater where the hidden world had been became a wound in the street, blackened, steaming for days, surrounded by warped metal and glass that glittered like teeth. People came to stare. People came to loot. People came to spit and call it justice. Then they stopped coming. Because the Wasteland never holds a funeral longer than it takes to get hungry. The Brotherhood stayed, of course. They built barricades and checkpoints and told themselves that catastrophe was contained. Maxon's voice became sharper over the radios, his patrols more severe. They hunted remaining Institute contamination with the same fervor they used to hunt everything else. But their holy certainty had a crack in it now. They had pointed every weapon they owned at one man, and he had walked away. Raiders thrived on that kind of crack. They turned the rubble into a market. They sold melted Institute alloy as lucky metal. They sold pieces of synth armor as ghost plates. They made songs too stupid to be true and too catchy to forget. One raider with a scar down his nose tried to start a chant in the middle of a camp. Jack! 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 His buddy punched him. Shut up. You want to summon him? I ain't dying because you got musical. The raider rubbed his jaw and muttered, It's called culture. Culture's what grows in old water, the buddy snapped. Now eat your iguana. The myth tried to form anyway, like mold. But the Wasteland couldn't keep it. Not because Raiden was too big for it. Because he refused to stay. Miles away, where the ruined highway unspooled into open dead land, a lone vertibird sat in the dust. Its rotors were still. Its pilot stood outside with a cigarette he couldn't light because his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Raiden stood a few meters away, facing the horizon. The wind tugged at his hair. The sky was the same rust color as everything else. The world looked endless in the way deserts do, like it could swallow any story and keep walking. The pilot cleared his throat. You leaving? He asked. Raiden didn't look back. Yes. The pilot tried again, voice small. Where will you go? Raiden's answer came without drama, without poetry. Out, he said. The pilot swallowed. They'll hunt you. Raiden finally turned his head slightly, just enough that the pilot could see the faint red ember behind his eyes. Controlled now, contained, no longer flaring. Let them, Raiden said. The pilot hesitated, then blurted, Why didn't you kill Maxon? Raiden stared at him, and for a moment the pilot felt the weight of everything Raiden could have been in this world. Tyrant, god, monster, king. Raiden's voice was quiet. Because I'm done being someone's answer, he said. He looked back toward the horizon. And I'm done being someone's excuse. The pilot opened his mouth, maybe to thank him, maybe to ask for forgiveness, maybe to ask for a story he could tell later. Raiden didn't wait. He turned and walked away. No flourish, no last look, no promise of return, just steady footsteps into a dead world. The pilot watched him until the silver figure became a dot, and then even that dot disappeared into the haze like it had never been real. The wind kept moving. The highway kept cracking. The Commonwealth kept chewing on itself. And the last thing the pilot saw was not a hero, not a villain, not a legend. Just a man who refused to belong to anyone. Far behind him, Boston burned down to embers. The Institute was gone. The Brotherhood still had its airship and its banners, but it no longer had certainty. In the Wasteland, violent, hungry, unending, was the same as it had always been. Except for one fact that would never change again. Somewhere out there existed a blade that could cut any cage, and it was walking away, forever.